are talking Bigfoot. You might be saying, "Oh, why you won't talk Bigfoot? Why you not talking about the Dogman?" I'm gonna tell you why we're not talking about the Dogman, because y'all have seen the videos I've done. But we had all the videos of Dogman, and we got these other weird things in the background. We're gonna do some more investigation on that. We're turning our attention to the other stuff that's in the woods with them right now. Now, after we figure out what the hell is going on with that, we're gonna turn back and we'll start talking about the actual flesh and blood breathing monster Dogman. We need to figure out what the hell else is going on out there in the streets with it. So that's where we are right now. So tonight we are talking Bigfoot with William Lunsford, and I'm excited to spend a little time talking about Bigfoot. William, how are you doing this evening?
Dark, I'm doing great, buddy. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for everybody that's listening. Thank you to our armed service people and our public defenders that take care of us so that we can do what we do, man. I appreciate everybody for listening. Hopefully this will be a show that you'll enjoy, because I've got a lot of information. I've been doing this for 45 years. So hopefully I have a lot to share that can maybe make somebody else a Bigfoot researcher, or secure their belief in what they've seen. So very glad to be here. I appreciate you inviting me on here to be on here. Been looking forward to it.
Awesome sauce. Well, let's start here. I've discovered a couple of things since I've been in this kind of paranormal cryptid field for about 7 going on 8 years.
Right.
And I'm really a data-driven person. It's because my background is engineering. My brain is really organized. It's almost retarded how organized my brain works. But my sofa's messed up right now. It's flip side, like whatever. Anyway, I've discovered that there's a couple of things that happen that bring people into the field of cryptids in the paranormal field. Either they have an encounter when they're a child or a youngster, or they hear something from a parent and it happens at an early age where they take this interest, or as an adult they have an encounter or they find themselves in a situation that makes them very, very uncomfortable, and they start doing research. How did you get into the field of Bigfoot? Which side of it did you come in? Was it something that happened when you were a young man, or is it something that happened when you were an older man?
It's really funny, Dark, because it's kind of both. I grew up in a little place south of a town called Texarkana, Arkansas. It's one of the true twin cities. One side's in Texas, one side's in Arkansas. And we lived on a road called South State Line, where one side's actually in Texas, one side's actually in Arkansas. And we lived on a farm way out in the country. And so we would get reports every now and then of some things that were, it was about a 13-mile jaunt through the woods, and of some creatures that people would see on their way in from Texarkana downtown to towards where we lived at. And so you kind of became familiar with it. Every now and then where we were out there on the farm, we would hear some things that we just knew it wasn't anything normal. It wasn't coyotes, it wasn't bobcats. You would hear them, and like I said, it was almost as loud as, we had 2 railroad tracks that ran behind our house about a mile. The volume sometime would equal that of those. It would actually make your clothes quiver. At the end of this road was a river, Sulphur River, and my dad was an amateur boat builder, so we would go down there and to test the boats that he had made and do a little fishing. So one day we actually first encounter I remember is having we had 2 little, I called them monkeys because I didn't know any better than that. I said, "Dad, there's 2 monkeys down there on that sandbar." And he goes, "Yep." And he goes, "There's Mama up on the hill." Well, I kept looking. I couldn't never define her, but anyway, he differentiated between the size of monkeys and Mama, so I knew it was something that something that was there. My dad was a really smart man, and so then we had another place there where we had a friend that came, and he delivered produce to our house down there, and you would hear him coming in his wagon. He had a mule that would pull his wagon. He lived about 3 miles away. One night he comes running up our driveway with that mule, and man, you could hear those wheels cracking and skipping those rocks. And he was banging on the door, and he's like, "Where's Mr. Bob? Where's Mr. Bob?" So we went and answered the door. I answered the door. My mother came to the door, and she said, "Well, Otis, how are you doing?" He goes, "I'm not too good." He said, "Where's Mr. Bob?" She said, "Right here." So when my dad come out, and he asked my dad if he still had his gun, and he said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Well, me and Otis had something some kind of booger jump up on the road there on the way down here." He said it took the mule's name was Roscoe, and he said it took Roscoe about a mile before he would quit running. And he said, "So I came down here." He said, "Y'all was the only ones I know to come down here." And so Dad got with him. He wanted my dad to get in the car and follow him with his gun and also with the headlights back to his place. So he did, and then, like I said, we would hear the things, but after that, things kind of dampened out. We moved back to town. And so when we moved back to town, didn't have anything. Then 1971, there was a creature down here. I live about anywhere from, depending on what part you go to, from 15 to 20 miles from a little town called Fouke, Arkansas. Fouke, Arkansas was the home of the legend of Boggy Creek, or the Fouke Monster. And that was that
Right.
creature that, if you've ever heard of that, it's really been one to help a lot of people get started. It really didn't help me get my start as much until a later date, but I'll touch on that in a sec. But so it ran across the road. Nearly 3 people in a vehicle nearly hit it running across Highway 71. Then it was seen by several other people. Then it actually came up around the house. They had some newlyweds in it, and it's for about 5 days to try to get in their house. It would reach their hands. It would reach its hand through the windows and things, and so it was picked up as a national byline because, like I said, Fouke is just a little town, very, very small population. And if it could happen there, it could happen anywhere because, most of us have aunts or uncles or somebody that has land out in the country. And the fact that it was happening there in a little town, it's not an insignificant town for sure. Very, very fine people. But a town there that's kind of obscure, just kind of set between Texarkana and Shreveport, those are going to be your 2 points of interest you're going to see on the maps. And so the fact that it's happening there, so people really took an interest in it. And so then the Legend of Boggy Creek came out about 72 or 73. And so after that, that was about all you heard after the movie died down. And so, but I used to fish. We had some gravel pits that we used to fish down in the dark, and that was my thing. I really enjoyed fishing. My dad died when I was 12, but the places we had gone to, I still, whenever I got a chance to drive, would drive in there and fish. And so one day I have a chance encounter with one of these boogers. The first time, it was just where I was going down there, and as I walked down this gas line, and when I got back to where I was going to my vehicle, the thing screamed at me, and I could hear him pacing me along the edge of this gas line as I walked down through. And whenever he finally screamed, as I said, man, your clothes just shake like that, and so do your knees as soon as you hear it. And I knew it wasn't anything that I had ever been across before. We have panthers, we have bears, and we've got hogs, we've got bobcats, we got everything, but I've never really heard anything like that, except maybe, like I said, with those that would yell down there behind the train track. So I ran across the creek, got back to my vehicle. I look around, there's nothing there. I'm like, oh man, boy, you just dodged a bullet, whatever it was. So I went and bought me a Bowie knife, and I wasn't going to give up my fishing hole. I figured, well, man, it's just a one-time thing since I've never had that happen before. I come back probably a week and a half, 2 weeks later, going down the same little area there late in the afternoon, and I have a chance encounter there as I'm crossing this gas line again. I have 1 or 2 more gravel pits I can fish. It's about twilight, and so I'm trying to get down there right quick and fish those before I have to go back. Well, man, when I do, I look down this little roadway there. It was a logging road where they used to get the log and gravel out of there. And on the left-hand side of this road, there was a shadow over there squatted down, and I had never noticed this shadow. You get sometimes, familiarity brings contempt, and you just get to where you're just so used to something, you don't pay attention. But this was it was such a standout in the difference that I remember going down there, and I stopped, and I thought, man, there's something wrong here right quick. And I looked at that shadow, and the shadow wasn't moving. Like I said, solid black. And so I wanted to go a little further. And like I said, I had just that trepidation. No, you don't need to go down there. And finally, I thought to myself, boy, you're acting silly. You just need to go down there. Well, as I took about another step, something started to stand up. It started to move, and it started to stand up. And whenever it did, it had a limb in front of its face, and it was eating the leaves. It raises the limb to where the limb should go, and then the thing keeps standing up. So it gets to 7.5, 8 foot tall. It walks out in this logging road in front of me, and it starts teetering from side to side and staring at me. I mean, never took its gaze off of me, never makes a sound. But I started instantly thinking, first when I saw the hair on it, I thought, well, that's a bear. I'd seen bears before, and although that might not be a pleasant encounter, still I wasn't as worried about that. But then I knew it wasn't a bear. Then I thought, well, maybe that's a sloth, but Arkansas doesn't have any sloths, and I knew that was kind of a off the wall idea. I knew it wasn't anybody down there that was in some kind of ghillie suit or anything like that, because I was a good mile and a half from my vehicle, through the woods, through chiggers, through water. And when the thing's sitting there, and I'm like, I knew what it was. I didn't believe at that time. I did not believe. This was 1977. And like I said, about 3 years, 73, it's about 4 to 5 years after the Fouke Monster movie came out. And I did not believe. And since it had died down, everybody said, well, the thing has gone back into the woods, or it's not here anymore. But that day he was. So I stood there, and we stared at each other. Finally, he walks back to the same tree. He pulls the limb down that he was originally chewing on. He skinned the cat with his lips. He got all the leaves off and chewed for a second and walked in front of me. And then I thought, man, this is it. This is where you're going to die. And so as I sit right there, and again, he started teetering that back and forth and looking at me and very, very much posturing to me like, don't come down here. This is my area. And he didn't realize what little worry he had in me doing that for sure, because I wasn't going to take another step after that. Well, finally, as he sits there and he's staring at me, he goes to He takes a step on that right foot, but he pivots on the left. He takes 2 steps, and the third steps, he's into the woods. Well, I can't see him or hear him. But I'm wanting to run. I couldn't run before then. There was no way in the world. I tried my best. I don't know whether it was called from these creatures create something called infrasound, which can actually make you kind of catatonic there. And it was, and part of it was just plain fear, man. I was just frozen to the ground. There was nothing I could do. Finally, I got to thinking, man, if you're going to do something, you need to go. So I had some big gravel pits behind me. I was either going to dive into one of them and try to swim away. I was a very good swimmer, could swim underwater forever. And then I was also a miler at track. So I was going to try to either run my mile, one or two. So I take off finally running, and instead of jumping into the pit, I just decided to try to outrun him. And so he didn't come towards me. Never saw him again. But I run back there. I get back to the creek that I had crossed down there that I had to wade through. I actually jumped over it like a steeplechase, ran up the side of the bank, ran across this open field. I thought, man, he'll catch me here. There's nowhere I can hide. There's nothing I can do. He doesn't get to another little about 100-yard stretch there. There's nothing, just canopy of trees just like this. And it is so dark. My man, he'll get me right here. Well, he didn't. I got down there to the gate, threw my stuff over the gate. I dove through the gate, got my key in my door, and started my vehicle. And I look out there, and there's my fishing tackle. And I'm like, oh gosh, man! Like I said, I was a poor kid, man. That not only was that my way of entertainment, but like I said, I wasn't rich enough to afford another real nice rod and reel like that, and it had been given to somebody that was really, really special to me at the time, and so it had a lot of sentimental value. So I looked around. I pulled up about 3 or 4 feet with that vehicle with my car. I had a Datsun B210 hatchback. Tossed that stuff into the passenger side, and including my Bowie knife. Whenever I saw him, I actually pulled my Bowie knife out and waved at him. I'm like, man, if this is going to happen, which was really stupid. But like I said, you're 17 and bulletproof. That's about the only thing you can think of. But anyway, I get in my vehicle. I drive back home. I take inventory, man. I mean, I am crying, water all over my face. I'm dirty. I'm shaking. I'm hyperventilating. I can't hardly, get a cognizant thought except that if he steps out in front of me, I'm fixing to wreck this car. Well, it didn't, and I got back to Texarkana, which was probably at that time, about a 12 to 13 mile jaunt. I walk inside, man. I jump down in one of my recliners, and my mom comes in there and, make small talk. She says, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Mom, I saw the Fouke monster." And she kind of just giggled a little bit, and she said, "The Fouke monster?" I said, "Mama, I saw the Fouke monster." Well, my mama, man, I wasn't no lying kid, I was raised in a good Christian home. I didn't believe in monsters. I didn't believe in telling lies, and I'm sitting there telling her what's happening. And she realized by the way that I'm behaving that I had actually seen what I said. She said, "Well, son, I believe you, but I want you to know I don't think you ought to tell a whole lot of people." And so I took her advice except for 2 people. And when I did, they both laughed me to scorn. They said, "Man, I know you saw something. This is one of the worst sentences I ever hear. I know you saw something, but you didn't see no Fouke monster." Yes, Dark, I did. And I knew what I saw. I ran it time and time and time through my mind. There's a video loop and what I saw. So I knew what I had saw. And so anyway, so I didn't tell anybody after that. And it went for a long time. And like I said, I was a senior in high school. Then about 8 years later, there's a place there called Mercer Bayou. And Mercer is world famous for having Bigfoot encounters. It's right there off of the Sulphur River. And so I was down there one day with my nephew. I had a new boat. Didn't know how long it would take to get back. So I was about 30 minutes after dark. And we got back there and pulled the boat onto the ramp, went to get my truck, pulled it onto the boat ramp. We're just having a good time. My nephew was 8 years old. We'd had a ball. We caught a lot of fish, and he caught a lot of fish. That was really important to me for him to have that good time and to instill that kind of a lifestyle in him. And then all of a sudden, over in the corner, this thing stands up, and it's over in the corner of the parking lot. It stands up and takes off running through the woods. Well, man, my nephew just freaks out, and I did too, because I was really more worried. I was worried for me, but I was more worried for him being 8 years old. And I said, "Get in the truck." He goes, "What?" I said, "Get in the truck." "What?" I said, "Get in the truck." So he gets in the truck. I go around. I don't even tie my boat down, man. I just take off, and there's a road about a mile away up there. And so I got to that road. I got down. I tied my boat down. He goes, "You're not getting out, are you?" And I said, "I'll be fine, Chris." I said, "Just stay in." So after both those encounters, I tried each time to go and do find as much information as I could, but there wasn't a whole lot back in 1977 with my first encounter. Back in 1985, there was a little bit more. We'd already, 77, we'd had the Patterson-Gimlin film, and we'd had the stuff there in the California out there with the Jerry Crew and all that. We'd actually named it there where they were building those roads, but there just wasn't that much more. Again, I remember one. I remember not Dennis the Menace. There was a show called The Creature with the Big Feet. I went back and looked that up. That came out in 1963. So there was something there that they based that on also. But I just thought all that was, to promote Hollywood. But I realized these things are real, and I had to learn something about it. So I did. I became uh, a very, very good student. I wanted to know about them. I knew if I was going to have an encounter, I wanted to have something to do about it. I wanted to have something to do with it, to know what to do, what not to do. And as you know, once you see one, man, there is a kind of a need inside you that where I've got to see one again. I've got to see one again. I've got to reaffirm what I know I've already seen, even though that's the second time I had seen them. So again, I studied like that. The lady I married, I knew at some time. I married in 1981 there, and so I knew I had to share with her and her parents that I had actually seen the Fouke monster, and so. I expected her dad to say, well, son, that's nice. So go ahead and pick up your stuff and leave my house and don't come back. But instead, I got the story of the lady across the road from them who had a garden party, and they were out in her front yard having a garden party. And there was a pasture right there to the south of her house. They had a fence line. Well, one day during her garden party, one of these things starts walking down her fence line, and it's one big rusty red color, and it sits there and it's walking. It stares at her about like it did me. It didn't stop to teeter, but it continued to just giant step through there. And she tried to keep the lady's attention on her. It got to the fence. It stepped across, went across where my in-laws were building the house at the time. And so they didn't ridicule me, but I knew right then with somebody with that kind of background, that was the girl I was going to marry. So I did. But and I mean, it's crazy, but the fact that when I started telling people, but that it meant so much that they didn't ridicule me. And so when I told them, but I didn't make a believer out of it. She knew, as the statement I said, I hated. I know you saw something, but you didn't see the Fouke monster. And her dad's a very practical man. He's a very good man, Christian-minded man, and he wouldn't belittle me as that, but he said, I just can't believe there's anything like that. He said, you saw something. He said, but you didn't see the Fouke monster. After 30 years with her, I made a believer. 33 years of him, I made a believer out of him. Actually, made a knower, not a believer, out of both of them right there. And so that's how I got started. Man, just like I said, by an accidental encounter that it had more to do with than I did. And as well as the second one there, I was in the right place at the right time down on Mercer Bio. And then after that, I started spending a lot of time looking for it because I had to know, I had to, quote, scratch that itch, unquote, that I had to see another one again. And so I was a UPS man. I would ask people in the different areas and stuff like that, and some would ridicule me, and some would not. And some would actually volunteer information. And again, I tell people one of the best lines I had, I would tell people, well, Bigfoot doesn't live out here. It's because it's too far for him to walk. Well, a lot of people would laugh and they'd say, yeah. But then sometimes you get somebody that say, well, if you think that, you need to be here about dark. And I told the one lady there when she said that, I said, well, I'm afraid of the dark. And she goes, well, you should be. I'm like, oh, I got to know more, man. So again, my favorite Martian antenna went up. And I said, tell me more. So she told me a little bit more about it. And so, but I never got a chance to go back down there. She passed away. Never got a chance to go back down there. But the fact that as old and wise as she was, and that she was a believer or a knower, well, I knew right then. And so I also had the good fortune to become a UPS man down in Fouke, not too far from where I'd had my original encounter. And if you know the background story of the Fouke monster, there were people camping in their pastures. They were camping in their front yard. They were cutting their fences, going into the woods and everything else like that. And those people really got kind of a raw deal on that thing, but they handled it with class. There's some very classy people, and they still get made fun every now and then. But with that right there, I was down there, and I would go up to somebody delivering to their house, and I'd say, "Man, you ever seen the creature?" And they'd all just laugh. "You ain't a monkey chaser, are you?" And I'd laugh. No, I'm not. But I said, I just wonder, Well, then there about 2 or 3 times later, after being to their house, I said, "You remember you asked me the first time you was down here if I'd ever seen the creature?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, I have." And they said, "We just want to make sure you wasn't going to make fun of us because we certainly had a lot of that." So they would tell me their story. And so, but I said, "Well, man, why didn't you tell me the first time?" I said, "I wasn't going to make fun of you." They said, "Well, that's one thing we wanted to see, because we took a lot of ridicule." But, they also said this. They said, it's a normal way of life for a lot of us down here. We know it's real. We see it all the time. It's just not a big thing. And they said it's not something that we want to go up and try to hug like a teddy bear. Said, but we accept it as being part of our nature around here. And so that was really cool. And then I said I went up towards the Ouachita Mountains and the Ozark Mountains. I started picking up stories up there. I thought, well, man, these things are not just here in Texarkana. Then I went down towards Louisiana down there, and that's probably 40 miles. Started picking up the stories towards Louisiana. I went a UPS route about 70 miles to the west towards Dallas. I picked up stories there. Same way, again, going east over towards Magnolia and El Dorado, Arkansas. And I'm like, man, these things are everywhere. So I really knew then that I had to really do some more studying. And I kept a little notebook there of the things that people told me, and I was just fascinated. I never, during that time, I never listened to any podcasts or anything because, Doc, I wanted my research to be my own. I didn't want to be influenced by what somebody else had said, and so
That makes sense.
yeah, there's there's a lot of false narratives of people saying what Bigfoot does and what they don't. Now, I'm not saying I've seen everything. I generally try not to comment on things that I have not seen and have not experienced. Just because I have not experienced them doesn't mean it's not true and that other people have not. But I wanted my research to be my own. So once I came across something, I could check that off as being, yep, classic Bigfoot behavior. Yes, check. A classic Bigfoot habitat. And so I did. And so that really helped me a lot too, because like I said, I knew what I had found. And once the people would tell me, I'm like, wow, that's happened to me, or that happened to Jane over here in Douglasville, Texas, the very same thing. So that's kind of how I got started. And man, I've been really been at it. The last 7 or 8 years have been just incredible. I don't know whether the creatures' numbers are increasing, which I think they are, but I don't know if that's the reason, or whether I'm just a better researcher, or whether or not I have about 6 different areas I go to, but 2 are really my main areas. And I'm convinced that in 2 of these areas, the beings know me, or recognize me, or recognize my truck, and so they tend to let themselves be seen more than what they would otherwise. So I've been getting a lot of sightings. I have 5 good research partners there. I've got a man named Daniel Becker who is from Anchorage, Alaska. He's just recently gotten into it. Very, very sharp man, thinks outside the box, can run things by him. I have a friend named Shannon Cruz who actually has him on his land, who actually had one up there staring at him while he was up in his deer stand one morning, screamed at him, and he screamed back. It took off. He did too. But he called me that afternoon, and so he says, these things are real. And I said, yeah. He was talking to a friend of mine on the internet there, and so he asked my friend Jody Raphael. He said, Jody, you ever seen one? Jody said, no, but Will has. So he called me and he said, man, could I private message you? And I said, sure. So he did, and he told me what had happened. Oh man, I thought he'd never asked, but finally he said, would you be willing to come here and take a look? Shoot, man, I was like the Roadrunner cartoon, man. The highway curled up behind my truck, So I got up there that afternoon within 30 minutes and listened to his story. And he had a little side-by-side mule vehicle. We drove there, and sure enough, man, 10 minutes into it, we find a track right there in the middle of some deer feed that he had put out there. And we get on the back area of his land, and then we got a couple of them that are back there hooting at us. And as you know, they do hoot, they do howl. And then went to another spot. Then we get a couple of tree knocks. Then we go back to his house for a little bit. We go back out and we sit in the deer stand, and then about dark, the same thing happens. So he and I become good friends. He's given me, him and his folks have been really generous to let me have the free reign of their place to come research as I will. And he's gotten to see the creature twice more there. Man, we have found tracks. We've gotten great pictures down there. We've had more encounters. I haven't had the visual down there again yet, but he has. And actually his own family, like the Bible says, prophets not without honor except in his own country. Well, his family kind of laughed at him too, until his sister walked outside one morning. There's one standing across the garden. So people down there, they realize it. And with him, he's a great partner. Randy Crawford, boy, Randy's got a very good analytical mind. Like I said, my wife and my son actually research with me. My son is a dentist, so he's very, 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 very smart, and I say that proudly. Not with any kind of way to brag or anything, but just that he's a very sharp young man. Very proud of him. And my wife, man, she's got Ellie Mae syndrome. She walks through the woods, and these things just come to the edge, And then so I have another man named Stephen Hill. Stephen has been a friend of mine for 30-something years. We started researching. First 2 nights we went out, we saw 3 each night. We actually got a video of a mama and 2 babies the first night we went out. And so we got that for about 20 minutes. And the way we found that was my son was a preacher in a little town in northern Arkansas. So we were driving home, and it was after daylight saving time. Well, I see something walking down the road. I said, Reese, watch out. There's a hitchhiker there. Don't let him throw a bottle of rock through there and hit you. And he's on his phone naturally. And so he just looks up, he danced back down. All of a sudden, when I get up to this thing, it turns around and it's a Bigfoot. I said, Reese, it's a Bigfoot. And I slammed on the brakes. It ran across and then it went into these woods there. Well, as so I know there's a place I always wanted to check out. Well, Stephen, when he lived up there, Stephen goes, man, I got a place we can run right quick. I said, okay. Man, coincidentally, we go to the same place. And I said, oh, man, I said, this could be good. Well, it was. It's the very first night. So we got a mama and two babies that night on video. And then I had another one there on February the 9th of that year. And then, man, then it's gone crazy. We put out game cams, and man, during the month of March in 2019, it was incredible how many pictures we were getting. And as to this day, I mean, getting a bunch of them on the game cams. I've gotten some now with my blasted cell phone. My wife has gotten a couple with her Canon AE1 camera. And so, like I said, and this year was the strangest because Daniel, my friend, came down from Alaska. Last year, he came down in October, which is one of the best months for researching Bigfoot. Down here, man, like I said, the deer hunters come out. They wound the deer. The Bigfoot is basically, nature's cleanup service. They do that, and they'll take care of those things. But me and Daniel were down there, and the first time, like I said, we both got COVID. We didn't get to research. Well, he came back this time in April. And, man, we had a very, very effective series of trips. We got a picture of one that's about a 10.5 footer. And it's got a little hand across its chest, like one is holding on to it from behind. Very, very great shot. That's one of the best camera shots that we have. And he works for the government, so he had a little better camera than I did. So I took the gun because we also have rattlesnakes and copperheads and cottonmouths down here. And so I was going to try to keep us safe, and hogs. Man, I'm more worried about hogs than I am really any of those other creatures. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing the safety deal. And so I said, Daniel, we hear some noise several times there. I said, I said, start taking you some pictures here along the edge of these woods. So we're on a logging road that's in the middle. And I said, take it kind of grid style. So he takes one about here. He goes over 10 foot. And sure enough, we get up there a little bit ways and we start looking. And sure enough, there's this 10.5 foot Bigfoot standing right there. So to his credit, he had already lined up a photographer in Anchorage, Alaska, where he's from, to send these pictures to. So he sends it to her. She sends it through some filters, and it draws out, looks like a little laser picture of the outline of what's there. Well, he also sends it to a man named L.A. Marzulli. And Marzulli is well known in the public speaker deal. I think he does more Nephilim and angels and things like that. But right. He gave it a glowing review, saying there's no doubt in my mind it's a real. We're still there in the field, and we got this thing sitting there looking at when he's getting feedback back from the girl who has the photography shop and also from Marzulli. So that was really great. I went back then later on to check that to check that area. I took a meter stick with me, and it was 10.5 foot tall. I actually saw another in one group there. There was 5 in one group. Two of them were in a tree. The other 3 were down there in the front. Then I got another one over in a brush top that was sitting there looking at me. I was able to get his picture with my cell phone. So that was really, really a good April for us. So I had one more sighting there in May that was just he was there, and then he took off. Didn't even get a chance to hardly get my cell phone up. It's hard to do. People say, well, why can't you get pictures? Man, try this with your dog. When your dog, say, grabs his food bowl, starts running across the yard, bouncing around, get your cell phone out, line up the shot, get it focused in, and take a picture before he ever drops the bowl. You can't hardly do that. And that's about the same thing with Bigfoot, because they're not, as a rule, they're not going to sit there like, like you're doing a portrait and let them look at you. They're going to move. They have a need to remain unseen, except I think after you've been there for a while, like we have, because they do make themselves known when we're there. Now they'll actually walk to the edge of the woods. My wife can do a call. Like I said, if they have little ones, they'll actually pull the little ones up to look. I've got a camera that sends pictures to my cell phone while I'm there in bed, and all of a sudden it goes off. And then you'll get it, and there's a picture of Bigfoot standing in front of my camera right there. It's become such a joke between me and my wife. As soon as my camera goes off, she flies on top of me like she's doing a body slam, like
trying to see what it is, huh?
Yeah, exactly right. Like Macho Man Randy Savage. She grabs it and looks at it, and she's gotten where she's very good. So
let me ask you this question.
Sure.
I'm gonna bring you back a little bit to a couple of things you said.
Go right ahead.
The first thing I'm gonna talk to you from a Christian perspective, a man who believes in Jesus Christ, a man who believes in God, and both of us being that. And this is more of a personal thing, but it's gonna play out through this interview because I'm struggling with this. As a man of God, how do you feel about the pursuit of these things? How do you balance that in your mind and in your heart? Because it seems to me like there's something weird with this whole scenario and the whole situation of Bigfoot and other cryptids. I've been
It,
struggling with that recently, and it's because it's like at some point in time, you like for example, you guys have photos, you have videos, you have
yep.
the information, you know it's real, you can prove it's real.
Yes, sir.
Like I'm trying to figure out where I draw a line in the sand. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever thought about that?
I have. And I'll tell you what, since I have been doing this, like I said, Stephen is my more often research partner than not. And he and I have been down there more often than not in the dark and everything. Man, we got some pictures, some things that I wasn't ready to accept. Uh, there's things out there, like I said, it's not just Bigfoot. I know people say, well, you're crazy for believing in Bigfoot. Well, let me tell you what, there's other things out there too. We get some pictures of stuff every now and then that flat scare me to death, man. And I'm 6'2" and or 6'1" now. So I'm 6'1", 270 pounds, and Steven's probably 6'3" or 6'4", about 360. And we see things there that, man, now we as a rule just don't go down there by ourselves very much anymore, because if we have an encounter that's either aggressive or that we can't understand, realize how quick something can turn bad. But as a Christian, as I said, I was raised in a godly home there, and anything we don't understand, we tend to frame as monsters. And that's kind of what they did with the Fouke monster. Well, what I've
Right.
learned about Bigfoot is these jokers are familial. They tend to run in family groups. They tend to tend to get some of the same tracks every year from the different groups and stuff like that. They're very, very good parents. And as I said, they tend to have a soft side to them, to where they could kill us anytime they wanted to. They could catch us anytime they wanted to. And so far, I've only had 2 encounters that have been aggressive. I would have had a third one, but I was wise enough to leave. But but I think God put them here. Everything He put here, He put for us to understand. And people say, well, how come nobody's ever seen one? They say, well, how come there's no pictures? Dark, I've got a bunch of pictures, and people say, well, why don't you show them? I show them to a lot of people, the ones who show reverence and respect to the creature, not to me. I couldn't care less about myself, but I'm not going to sit there and show it to somebody who wants to sit there and try to make fun of somebody or somebody else who's doing the creatures. That's just not what. But I've sent my pictures all over this countryside, and I mean all of this United States, and sent some across the seas over there, and people go like, oh my gosh, man, I never would have believed that these things were real. But I keep my mind open, because I realize I don't know everything, and the more I'm finding out, boy, the more do I really realize that. But as far as for Bigfoot and Dogman, let me throw this in here right quick about Dogman.
Hmm.
My wife has to defend me as far as for being a Bigfoot researcher, and boy, that's hard for her to do. She's very loyal towards that right there, And boy, somebody say something about me, man, she'll flog you in a heartbeat. But she told me, she said, please don't talk about Dogman. And I said, well, Cindy, because at first I wasn't sure I had seen one. And then whenever I became sure that I had seen one, then I told her, I said, I've got to talk about this. And I've actually seen more than one now. And up there on mine in Stevens area that we research, the Bigfoot and the Dogman actually run together. And that's, some people say, man, that's crazy. Well, it may be crazy, but they do run together. I've got pictures of a field right there where I've got 2 Dogman. One's walking towards us. One is over there laying underneath a laying log. There's 3 Bigfoot behind him. And then there's a mother Bigfoot and a juvenile Bigfoot that she's pushing along the wood line back through there. You've got the silhouettes, but you can see breasts. You can see her arm. So with that right there, but I had to not tell people for a long time that Dogman was real, because I thought I had seen it, but I wasn't sure. Well, now I have, and so she has to defend me on that. So it makes it harder sometimes for your friends around you to defend you, because they know I'm not crazy. They know I'm not a liar for sure, and so with that right there, I just kind of keep my mind open. There's other cryptids out there that we don't know about, and I could show them to you, and you go, oh my gosh, So, but they are real, but the good Lord made them and put them here. Some people have seen some of my pictures and say those things look like demons. Well, they may look like demons. I don't know enough about demons. The Bible don't tell us enough about demons in the last days here for us to know. And if it is, I'm open to it. I don't have any problem with that. You read about how you being a Bible believer about Leviathan and Behemoth, and the description they make, and people want to write that off as being an elephant and a hippopotamus. Man, please,
No, no,
that
hell no.
no, man, it's not even close. With the sinew and the legs and the tail, like legs like tree trunks and big tail like like cedars and all this stuff. And then the other one has scales and fire coming out. But they want to say, "Oh, you're crazy." Man, if the Bible says there's a fire breathing dragon, there's a fire breathing dragon. It doesn't affect my salvation. Same way with Bigfoot. But these creatures are here, and God put them here, and I believe that. And if some folks don't believe it, I'm sorry, but it's easier for me to do that than to believe that something came from nothing and then is evolved into this society, what we have now. So I do. I just keep my mind open. I'm not surprised by anything. I'm very have to make a discernible decision whether I want to be around it. Then, if I want to stay there and see what happens or not. But it's something there. I believe there was 2 Bigfoot on the ark when Noah put there, and with what I've seen, I said very, very intelligent creatures. And so I'm not ashamed to say that. And so I think that's it. I think if you keep your mind open, just like I did with Dogman, and like I said, some of these other things, you're going to see that there's things out there. We don't know it all. We want to think we do, but we don't, man. We're a very, very smart creature. God put this earth here to be for man's use and benefit. And we have, although some people may think we've, raped it or abused it, we haven't. We've been pretty good stewards with it. And so with that reason right there, I don't have any problem saying that I don't know everything there is, and I may find some more. I've never experienced what some folks call the woo, as far as, Bigfoot mind speak or anything else like that. And so I don't comment on it as a rule. But if I ever do, I'll be the first one to tell them, yeah, that's happened to me. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to put somebody down for saying that, because I don't know, just because I haven't experienced it. And that's the way I felt until 15 seconds before I saw that first Bigfoot. Bigfoot was not real. Even then, the name, it was out in California. It wasn't the same thing. Legend of Boggy Creek was not real. Sasquatch was not real.
Right.
All of a sudden, it walked out of mythology into reality. And so they're real. And again, I don't ever tell anybody, well, you didn't see what you say you saw, because that doesn't fit the narrative anymore. There's too many people. If even one person is telling the truth, take me out of the sideline there, take you out of the sideline. If one person is telling the truth about their Bigfoot or Dogman encounter, then Bigfoot and Dogman is out there.
Right. I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. Another thing I noticed is my brand is built on talking to eyewitnesses. Like from
Right.
day one, that's what I've been doing, and that's how I get all this data. There is something, and I call it, and this is my first time actually ever saying this publicly, but I call it the mystery of a woman. There is something about women that when you put them in an environment where Bigfoots are, they gravitate towards that woman. I've always told people I believe because God made women to where all life comes out of women. So they're
That's
like
right.
walking life. They are life, and so they're attracted to that life and that of the woman. But it across the board, every female researcher. Now there's female researchers who claim to be like pagan witches. And they like I could call upon them, but it's the
Right.
same. That you can take a woman who knows absolutely nothing about Bigfoot, drop her in a situation and where they're in the area, and they're going to gravitate towards her the same way they would gravitate towards the other woman who says she used magic. The same way they'll gravitate towards another woman who's a Christian. So it's something about the woman that they gravitate to. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on what that might be.
Now I really do. As you and I both know, they caught us, didn't they? So with that,
Sure did, huh?
they have that appeal, man. God made no other creature more beautiful than a woman. Women are more feeling, they're more observant. They on that case right there, they have that softer side to them that we men, we're not raised. We're allowed to show that softer side that we have, But like I said, they see things and they can remember things that we can't do. Man, my wife can remember what I was wearing 25 years ago. The first argument we ever had, and we've been married for 41 years, so their memory. But again, that soft side to it. Again, I told you my wife has what we call Ellie Mae syndrome. She can go down there, and about every time she goes, they come down there. Then sometimes I think there's some natural things that are involved there as far as for pheromones with women and stuff like that the Bigfoot can pick up on that we men or the other creatures don't talk about. And I'm not trying to be, slutty or dirty or anything else like that. But I think there's things during, nature's every 28 days, I believe they pick up on that. I know dogs do. And I know for a fact, different ladies that I have talked to, when they tell me their story, they'll kind of lean over to the side and say, well, it was that time, it was that time. And I think that's part of it. I think it's something that it doesn't say how many of the bucks that are killed because they're using doe pheromone,
Mm-hmm.
and doe and heat pheromone thing. So I think they can pick up on that, and regardless of how close to them being our quote relatives unquote people think they are. I think that's something that they pick up on, and that softer side, that softer voice. We tromp through the woods. I do, man. I'm like Tarzan. I'm going through the woods there. Don't mess me. Don't mess me. Don't mess me. Whereas my wife, man, she's sitting there looking. She'll stop. She'll smell the flower. She'll do things like that. So they do. They are very, very attracted to women. Bigfoot creatures are, and they're also attracted to children, as you know. They're about like the same way. I've got a lot of reports of people where Bigfoot's watching their children while the children are out there playing and things. But the women thing is for real. And my wife will actually tell some of her other friends that whenever if they want to go Bigfoot hunting, said, let me know if it's that time, because you don't need to go during that time, because they tend to be a little more amped up, so to speak. So it is real. Like I said, I don't mean that being ugly in any way. So please don't nobody take it being that way.
No, we're just talking about the reality of it and the truth of it. Let me ask you this question. There's been I've talked to about five Bigfoot researchers, real researchers, who are out there at night, and they've all seen this thing. And I'm wondering if you guys have caught this on photographs. It looks like a hooded figure at night, and it's crazy because you can see it, but it looks like a hooded figure with glowing white eyes or white eyes. Have you seen anything close to that?
We have. I've actually seen two shadow people, and was not a believer in those things until I was actually with my
Yeah, I
son
could
was one
believe
of
that
them.
freak you out right there, bro.
Yeah, and I was with my nephew, the one that was with me when I saw the second Bigfoot I saw, and so with those. But like I said, I've also sometimes I think Bigfoot again, they have that need to hide. They're the world's greatest. The joke is, the world's champion at hide and seek, but they'll stand next to a tree, and just stand still and with those shadows and stuff, and you can't see them. But if something glint, some kind of light catches their eyes, they'll glint. So we've seen those, and then we've seen some other things that, like I said, I don't know if it's you want to call it demons or whatever, but it sure it sure makes you take a second thought and wonder if you're doing the wisest thing you can do to be in there. But they do that. And then we also have around here what's called devil monkeys. They're about 6 foot tall. They look about like a blasted through the nose and teeth, look about like a baboon, except they're not a baboon. And
Hmm.
they actually walk on too. Like I said, I've got pictures of those jokers as well. Didn't believe in them at first when I started hearing the stories, but then all of a sudden, so it is. I see those things like that right there, and I see them. Like I said, I see them at night. In the daytime, I don't see them.
Right.
But it's one of those nighttime things. And then I've seen several Bigfoot during the daytime. But at nighttime, it seems like, as you're talking about, those things that look like the hooded, that they're more of them that come out. And the same way with the devil monkeys as well. So that's a creature that I want him to just stay in his realm, whatever that realm is.
Yeah, stay where you belong.
Exactly.
You know
Stay
what
in
I'm
your
saying?
lane and let me do my Bigfoot research.
Let me do my. I'm with you, man. I tell you, when I worked for Energy, I went all through Arkansas, Mountain Home, Bull Shows, El Dorado, Magnolia. I want
Yep.
to say I spent some time over in. I definitely spent a bunch of time in Pine Bluff, and when you really get off, Jonesboro was crazy. That was
Yeah, oh,
just a
yeah.
crazy
Yes,
area.
sir.
Bro, when you start going to Jonesboro and you start going up into those mountainous areas, in the man, the feelings that come over you while you're out there, it's something, and it's not like a cougar or it's something out there, man. Like, and it's looking at you, and it's looking at you. We've had teams where it was like 8 guys out there scouting right away and scouting places for transmission lines to be put in the ground.
Right.
And I'm talking about hardcore Arkansas, born and raised woodsmen, and they'll be like, James, we about to go. Like, nah,
Yep.
man, we need no, 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 James, we leaving. Come on, man, we need to do this. No, like they would insist, we are leaving right now. We're going. You can stay here if you want to. I'm like, guess what? If y'all leaving, I'm leaving. But it would just go dead quiet, and
Yep.
it felt like somebody was looking at you. You couldn't deny it, man. You just couldn't deny it.
Yeah, as the old saying goes, you can cut it with a knife. You're exactly right. And all those places you mentioned, bull shows up there. Of course, that's a lake, a reservoir up there, Mountain Home. You've got the reservoir up there, and Lake Norfolk, and then El Dorado. You've got the Washita River. Magnolia. You've got Lake Columbia. You've got the Dorcheat Bayou. You've got all these bayous. And if you watch the Legend of Boggy Creek, there's one thing they said on there, that they always travel the creeks. Well, man, I don't know how they knew that back in '72, but or '71, but they did. But they do. There's 13 rivers within 60 miles of where I live here in Texarkana. And man, there's sightings on every one of those rivers. And so, what you mentioned right there, when you get up in those mountains like that, and they're there. When me and Daniel when he came in from Alaska this year, and we went to our area up there at the foothills of the Ouachitas, as soon as we drove in there, he said, "Oh man," he said, "this area is charged." I said, "Yes, it is charged," and you could actually feel it, like almost like electricity going down your
Mm-hmm.
back. And that's the day that we saw that 10.5 footer. So it is something real. Now, like I said, they can do infrasound. People don't want to believe it, but elephants can do it. Lions can do it. You have electric eels that can produce an electric charge. So there's things that some of these animals have that we don't understand, but that they can actually do. My buddy Steven was actually zapped with infrasound, and they had him on the table fixing to die, fixing to inject his heart with adrenaline because he was not responding. And finally he did, but they actually had the shot laying across his chest. They use infrasound. The Army came up with infrasound there in some of their tests. They use it to find enemy artillery. They use it as well to try to play certain decibels so that it affects the human nervous system. About like if you got, I have several friends who are insecticide people there and bug people, but then the people who don't want to deal with the chemicals, they have these things you plug in, and it puts out an infrasound wave, and when it does, it actually affects the bugs, affects their nervous system, and off they go. So Bigfoot can do that, and the thing is, like an elephant can do it. They can, determine it over 2 miles away. Lions can do it. Tigers can do it. But the thing about, elephant receives their infrasound from their feet. Well, man, what better creature to receive infrasound from their feet than a Bigfoot? Man, I've seen 22-inch tracks, 21.5-inch tracks. I've seen one that was 24. He might have slid, but because it slid, I'm still going to drop it down to about 22 there. But I've seen tracks that long. Man, those are, even Shaquille O'Neal's feet are not that big. And so with these creatures right there, so the things that they can do like that, it's a real thing. I've talked to several people who've had it where the infrasound has just knocked them to the ground. It'll upset your stomach to where you can't control your bowels. It'll make it to where you cannot control your kidneys. That happened to me the first time I saw one. I couldn't control my kidneys. And when you have that right there, so the things that they can do, it's just really amazing. But God didn't give us all the same deals. They didn't give Bigfoot the ability to drive cars or anything else like that. Or so each of them have different things that have been given to them to survive in their environment that make them the king of their environment. And they definitely are. So it is. It's really when you go up in those mountains like that. I've seen one in Oklahoma. I've seen some down Louisiana. I went up to Tennessee one time, found some tracks up there in Tennessee. So I've seen them in Texas and Arkansas, and one up there in Montana. And when you get up there, the ones in Montana, they're not quite as aggressive as ones are down here, but they sit back and they watch you. And they push over trees and they whistle. And so each of them are different. Of all the Bigfoot I've seen, most of them look different. They don't all have the cone heads. They don't all have the round heads. They're not all black. They're not all rusty brown. The feet are not always the same. Some of them appear to have feet that are more like in the simian range, like the apes and stuff. And some of them have feet that just like people. I've got some that are two-toed tracks, very few, but I've got a lot of three-toed tracks, a lot of four-toed tracks, a lot of five-toed tracks, and I've actually got one that was a six-toed track. So they're just so different in such an, with if we try to pigeonhole them, we can't do it. But one thing we can pigeonhole is the fact that they are the masters of their universe, and the things that they can do, God gave them ways to survive that we don't have, that we don't necessarily understand. But they're a very, very real creature. I promise you, man. It's anybody that it was just unreal for me to believe it, because I didn't believe it the first time, and then after that, then when I saw my second one, like I said, I knew because the new had worn off the first sighting in 8 years in '77. I wasn't as scared, even though I was hearing a lot of things. I was still keeping up with it. But by that second sighting, man, like I said, I was charged, and it was time for me to become a researcher. And I couldn't help myself, and I still do. Like I said, I still do it to this day. Love it. I talk. My wife gets mad because we go to the grocery store. I was with some people here. We were going to do a TV show down here, and they said, "Well," asked my wife, said, "How do you like having a son and a husband who Bigfoot hunts?" She goes, "I hate it because a 10-minute trip to the grocery store lasts an hour. Because he's going to see somebody that knows he does Bigfoot, and they want to ask about it."
And they want to ask questions. Let me cut
"Yep,
you off right there. I want to
go
talk
right
about
ahead.
something before we run out of time. Now, you
Go
got your
ahead."
book coming out.
Yep.
Tell everybody about the events that you got coming down the pipeline so they can give you the support they need. Talk to them about your book. Talk to them about your events that you're going to be speaking at. Run that by everybody.
But I'd love to thank you so much for that, because number one would be my book. I've had a book written for several years there, and I got it done. And then my mother passed away, and so I just kind of lost interest. And so when I finally picked it back up, was getting ready. And during that time, I was still going to the woods some. And man, all of a sudden, I had to change all the endings because I was getting more reports. I was having more things happen to me. You thought, man, I'm not going to write another book. I've got to include this hit. But I actually have a book written, and I've got pictures included with it. And I'm actually smarter than I look, like I said. So it's actually the two editors I've had said, one of them said to me, they said, surprisingly, Will, this is a good book. I'm like, well, thanks for that compliment, but I knew what she needed, you know. And she didn't have to do any editing on it, and neither did the other lady who I had edited. I'd had ladies do it because the men, just they tend to be, well, there ain't no such thing. I've hunted all these woods, and never have seen anything. So I've got that coming up. Again, I do a lot of stuff with a man named Keith Crabtree, who played the monster in the original movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek. And he and I do a lot of stuff together. And so I have something coming up with him here. In March, we'll do the camp out down at Smith Park, the Keith Crabtree Spring Camp Out. The camping is free. Man, we have a lot of the best Bigfoot researchers around here come on. And then I tentatively scheduled as one of the speakers of the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference. And we haven't worked out everything out on that yet, but there'll be a Nebraska Bigfoot Conference in April. I'm going to be one of the speakers in there. Hopefully we get everything worked out. And I'll be doing hopefully several podcasts and stuff. I really love sharing information. Want folks to know these things are real. So I'll have that. You can look up on Google. You can Google my name. I did not put any of them in there. I'm not an egotist or anything like that, but you can see some of the shows that I've done. I did the Fade to Black radio with Jimmy Church. I get Spaced Out radio with Dave Scott. I've done several more. I've had some really great hosts that have been really gracious. So anything we can do to those, if you can support, because I'm not monetized, and like I said, I'm not counting on that money, that book being the be all end all, but it's a very, very good read if I do say so myself. And I'd like for folks to pick that up and again, support it where you can, and support the guys who like you who do this. And we're not out here doing this because we want to be ridiculed. I've took more ridicule than I've ever been praised for doing this right here, but I'm going to keep on doing it because it means something to some people. When I get the calls back, Will, man, you'll never believe what happened, And when it does, you can't help but just smile, every tooth in your head, like you fix need to ear of corn, man, because you realize, hey, these people have had their eyes open. And then after that, you become friends for life after that. So again, that's about what I've got coming up right there. And then again, you can get in touch with me on Facebook. I try to answer everybody that contacts me. Sometimes I'm in Facebook jail, so I don't get to answer. And then folks say, oh, well, he's not going to answer. Well, that's not so. If it's that way, I'm generally stuck in Facebook jail. And when I get out, I try to answer everybody I can. So y'all can get in touch with me that way. Or through you, Dark, you know how to get my information right there. Put me in touch. I've had several people that put me in touch with encounters around my area down here. And it's hard to believe that you got those creatures. I've had several people that have called me. I've actually been able to settle them down that if these creatures were going to hurt them, they would already have done so. And so that's a benefit as well. And again, they've become lifelong friends. So man, again, that's about really what I've got going. But I do a lot of, I do 10 to 15 podcasts every year, sometimes more than that, but I try to limit it to that. So I don't want to put too much of me out there where you say, oh no, not him again. But I'm one of the hardest working researchers out there is. I'm in the woods 5 days a week. And I'm out there with boots on the ground. And then if I'm not doing that, if it's raining, then I'm driving the roads, looking for the places where they cross, looking for the footprints and things like that. And I'm willing to share what I've got with people. So again, that's kind of how I look at things. I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this for the fact that I love the heck out of it. I have a ball. I had one guy contact me not too long ago, asked me to be on his show. And he said, man, I contacted you. He said, because you look like you're having fun. And I said, man, I'm having a ball. And, I said, I'm scared. I have a very reverence for the creature. I said, but when you see one of these things or have some of these encounters, there's no way to describe it. I can't describe it to anybody, but once you're out there and they hear that first scream or they hear that first wood knock, or something, it changes the way you look at things. And so that right there is very rewarding for me. And so that's another reason I do what I do. So that's kind of a summary of that right there. But do look it up there. Like I said, I didn't put those things on Google. Look up William Lunsford Bigfoot, and you can see some of the things I've done. Hopefully you'll enjoy them, and and most of them are very, very. I feel like very, very informative because I don't hold anything back. Even the fact of being, we had one time that had the subcutaneous horn coming out of his head. I told him that, and then I got ridiculed to death. And then one of the guy who was the MC of the show, he went through there and found pictures of certain people that had the subcutaneous horns and things like that. Animals that are not supposed to. I have a buddy that actually developed a full-horned sheep and as a trophy animal, and he had a big farm out here. So that's not all. Like I said, I got laughed at, but then once you put the evidence out there, then people kind of backed up. Well, anything is possible in this world, and it is. We don't know it all.
No, I agree with you. We don't know it all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful, wonderful show talking with William. William, I'm going to have you back on again, man. Like I told you at the beginning, I want to do a roundtable discussion. I'm going to grab you and two more Bigfoot researchers.
Sure.
And then the way I'll do it is I'll line up topics and we'll do comparisons on things that
Sure.
you don't have to show any photos, but just comparisons of experiences in the woods. Because I find that if researchers actually communicate on a specific topic, like okay, eye shine on height on other weird things, then you start to see these correlations. And most of the times, there's some guys that I talk to that are I believe they're in Washington, and they had all kind of crazy stuff. They
Right.
saw the hooded figure, they saw all these different things. So I want to just bring people together so we can flush out the similarities from all over the United States. And once we do that, we can literally take a pen and paper and say, okay, we got three certified, field researchers who we know out in the field. Okay, check. We can check off boxes as say, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this, and now people get answers. And I don't really see people doing that in this community. It's kind of like every man for himself, and that every man for himself thing really leads to no conclusions. And that's the weirdest thing about this field for me. It's like come to a conclusion, man, and roll out some conclusions. You know what I'm saying? Get to the
Sure.
point of some things.
Everybody thinks they're going to get that $1 million picture. Trust me, that $1 million picture is not out there, man. I've got a bunch of pictures on my phone of Bigfoot. I've got faces, noses, eyes. I've got one where he's biting my camera. You see inside his mouth on the teeth. I mean, I've got pictures of fingernails and everything else like that too. I said, and the $1 million picture's not there. Once you get that, then everybody's like, well, man, why don't you get some video? Once you get that, then it's not going to be enough. Or the DNA, it's not going to be enough. But I want people to know, like I said, that these things are real. I would love to see them be classified. So, right now, about the only way that we can get them classified is have a dead body. And I'm not necessarily for that. I know it's like the Jurassic Park deal. They say when with the raptors, it's not the one that you see, it's the two you don't. Same way with Bigfoot. You go to kill Bigfoot, you're not going to make it out of the woods with that body. That's just a fact. So I would love to be in on that chat right there. I promise everybody, everything I'm telling you is true. I've been doing this 45 years. When I was a UPS man driving the roads, I was looking on the edges of the wood lines, looking down into the creek beds. Again, on whenever I would go fishing, I would fish all night long, man, on places like Lake Fork and things like that, and on some of these places like Mercerville, and looking into the woods. And so I've had a lot of experiences, but they've had more to do with than I have. And I'm gonna give them the credit on that. But they're there. But anything I tell you is gonna be real. And when you get into the right area, we live in what some people call Monster Central. It's the 4 states: Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Then too, like I said, you can go up on into Tennessee right there, but live in that area right there. And there's a lot of creatures that are around here, a lot of those beings that are around here. So I'm lucky enough to live down here with that. Lucky enough so far to come home every time that I've been on a research trip. And man, I would love to be a guest on your show anytime that you would have me. And the folks will have me back for sure.
Awesome sauce. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only James Williams, Dog Waters, and we are out of here.
And thank y'all, folks.